In this video, I'll go through the steps of using Teiko's TokuKit to fix a whole blood sample. When opening your kit, you should confirm that your kit contains the following. You should have one 4 milliliter EDTA tube, one orange top conical tube which contains buffer 1, one blue top conical tube which contains buffer 2, and two 2 milliliter plastic pipettes. You'll also need a test tube rack to hold the blood tube and the buffer tubes, a timer, a properly labeled dry ice box and dry ice if you're shipping your sample after the fixation, or access to a -80°C freezer if you're storing the tubes on site. And optional is an access to a biosafety cabinet to perform the fixation steps. You should start by unpacking the contents of your TokuKit so that everything is ready for when you draw blood from your patient. You can now continue by drawing blood from your patient into the 4 milliliter EDTA tube that was provided in your kit. Once that's done, bring the blood to the biosafety cabinet or your workstation to continue with the fixation. Now that you've collected your sample, you can go ahead and take the parafilm off of both buffer tubes and place them onto the test tube rack. Before you continue, make sure you mix the whole blood sample thoroughly by inverting the EDTA tube 10 times. Next, take one of the plastic pipettes from the kit and pipette exactly 2 milliliters of blood from your EDTA tube into the buffer 1 orange top tube. There is a black marking on the side of the pipette which indicates the 2 milliliter measurement. When pipetting the blood into the buffer 1 tube, pipette up and down a few times to make sure that the buffer mixes with the whole blood. Close the orange top tube and invert the entire tube at least 10 times in order to mix the blood with the buffer. Then continue by setting a timer for 15 minutes. Make sure to wait until the timer is up before moving on to the next step. Once 15 minutes have passed, you're ready to proceed with the rest of the fixation. Take the second clean plastic pipette out of your kit and pipette the entire mixture from the buffer 1 tube to the blue top buffer 2 tube. Make sure that you pipette the entire mixture into the second tube, not just 2 milliliters of the mixture. Go ahead and close the blue top tube and again mix thoroughly by inverting the entire tube to make sure that the blood mixes with the buffer. You can then discard both the EDTA tube and the empty orange top tube. Now that your sample has been fixed, it's ready to either be stored long-term or be shipped directly to Teiko or to your central lab. Your first option is to transfer the entire blue top tube that contains your fixed sample into a -80°C freezer where it can be stored long-term. You can go ahead and place the entire tube into your freezer. Your second option is to ship the fixed sample directly to Teiko on dry ice or directly to your central lab. In order to ship your sample, you should have a biohazard bag, dry ice, and a properly labeled dry ice box. To prepare your sample for shipping, you should first seal it into a biohazard bag. You should then place the bag into your properly labeled dry ice box and make sure to cover the entire sample in dry ice so that you can maintain the proper temperature during shipping. Once you've done that, you should then go ahead and seal your box and ship the sample overnight to its destination. Now I'll go over a few common mistakes you should avoid when processing your sample. You should not use a centrifuge at any step of the process. Do not switch the buffer order. You should be using buffer 1, which is in the orange top tube first, then continuing with buffer 2, which is in the blue top tube. Lastly, when placing your blood sample into the buffer 1 tube, make sure that you do not forget to set your 15-minute timer for the incubation period. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any further questions, feel free to email info@teiko.bio or visit us online at teiko.bio.